Hi everyone, this is Kelly from CARES, and today we're going to go over real quick how to pull and view the HMIS data quality report that our vendor, Foothold Technology, has created for us. So from our homepage, what you're going to do is you're going to go into the administration module, and then you're going to click on fiscal program. If you don't have access to the fiscal program button, then just have your supervisor either email or call your customer service rep, which would be either myself or Sue, depending on where you are, and we can set your permissions to give you access to the fiscal program button. Once you're in the fiscal program reports menu section, you'll see here on the left-hand side, there's a button that says HMIS Data Quality Report. When you click on this, we now have a page where we're going to select the project that we want to run this report for, as well as select the date range that we're looking for. So from this drop-down, you're going to select the project that you want to run the data quality report. You're going to select the date range that you want to run it for. I'm going to run it from 10/1/16 through 5/5/17. I want to run this report for today. I'm going to select Show Individual Detail because doing so will show me just by looking at the report if anybody is missing any of the information. I can look at individual detail and I can see who it is that's missing the information. The Send in Awards message is turned on by default and we cannot turn it off. That was done by our vendor, Foothold, and it was done really to clear up space on the CARES server. If we're all running reports or large reports that could take some time to run, it could bog things down. Your report could take longer to run, and this way you're not held up waiting for that report to display for you. The report is still going to display just like report builders and everything else does, but in this case it's also going to send it to your awards messages. So that way if you have some other work you need to do while you're waiting for the report to finish, you can do your other work, and just by having it in your messages module you'll have it right there to go back and reference if you need it. So once you've selected your program, entered in your date range, decided whether or not you want to show individual detail, you're just going to click on Continue, and the report is being processed. It's been sent to my awards messages, but now it's going to display for me. So the HMIS data quality report, first it's going to have our report validation table, which is all that's going to do is let us know the total number of persons that were served in this program in this reporting date range, number of adults and children. If anybody was given a date of birth with either client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, or approximate date of birth, they will show up in number of persons with unknown age, how many leavers there were total, how many of those leavers were adults, how many of those leavers were both the adult and head of household. And then again, number of stayers, number of adult stayers, how many veterans we served, the number of chronically homeless persons that were served, number of youth under age 25 that are parenting, total number of adult heads of household, number of children and unknown age heads of household, number of heads of household and adult stayers in the project more than 365 days. So these are our long-term stayers. Now when we move into data quality, first it breaks out into personally identifiable information. So a little bit of history behind this. HUD's plan for the 2017 data standards release was that they were going to break out the universal data elements into personally identifiable information and then universal data elements. Both sets of data was going to have to be collected from all program types, no matter what your funding source was. But they decided not to do that. They decided to just leave it as universal data elements the way that it is now. So, but they made that decision after this report was created. So just keep in mind that the personally identifiable information, or PII, is still part of the universal data elements. So personally identifiable information, we have our name, social security number, date of birth, race, ethnicity, gender. It breaks out into 3 separate columns. We have the number of people who answered client doesn't know or client refused, the total number of information missing, which means they selected either data not collected or this element is blank, which could be that the record was created long enough ago that these were questions that were not asked then, or in some cases, questions that were not asked of a minor household member, but that household member has since turned 18 and now does have to have that information collected for them. And then there's a column called data issues. Data issues is going to be approximate, whether it's approximate name, approximate social security number, approximate date of birth. HUD is moving towards collecting all of this information, and so now using the approximate values is going to make our missing data percentages higher. This is something that we at CARES, we are working on. We are developing a plan, so stay tuned for that. We're not going to stress out just yet. We're going to wait a little bit before we decide whether we're going to completely stress out or we're going to remain calm. So when we look at personally identifiable information table, we can see that I have 2 clients who answered either client doesn't know or client refused for social security number. I have 3 clients that answered data not collected or somehow I left it missing. I have 4 clients who I used approximate or partial social security number for an answer. That gives me a 90% for error rate. Universal data elements, we have veteran status, project entry date, which is our client's admission date, the relationship to head of household, client location, and disabling condition. And that's just doing a solid error count. That's taking client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, and the element completely missing, all squishing it into just one and counting that information. So we can see I have 1 person that's missing the relationship to head of household. There's a couple different ways that that can happen. I have 2 clients that are missing the client location. Then we're going to look at the income and housing data quality. Now, if your project is a project that does not collect income information, then you don't have to worry about this part. So this is going to have our destination, income and sources at entry, income and sources at annual assessment, and income and sources at exit. So I have 4 clients in this program, and now when I say 4 clients in this program, when I'm looking at income, I'm looking at the adults that are in this program. So I have 4 clients that have been in this project for at least 365 days during this reporting period that I have not completed an annual assessment for. I have not gone in and updated their face sheet. If you have any questions about how to record an annual assessment, jump back to our training page, and there is a recorded tutorial titled Annual Assessments, and you can take a look at that. Question 5, we're looking at chronic homelessness. So we're looking at the count of total records. So we have 9 records in permanent housing, And then if there's any clients that are missing that question, if they were asked, if you answered that the client was coming from a jail or a hospital, an institutional residence prior to project entry, it then asks, were you there less than 9 days? So if they're missing that they were there for less than 9 days, that would show up here. Same if you said that they were living with friends or family, or they were coming from another permanent type of residence, that will show there. Approximate date that this episode of homelessness started, if that's missing, that will show up in this column. The number of times in the last 3 years that the client was homeless is going to show up in this column. The number of months within the past 3 years is going to show up in this column. And then we have the percent of records that they were unable to calculate whether or not this client was chronically homeless. Then we're moving on to timeliness. CARE's policy is that all admissions and discharges will be processed within 10 days. So like I say during training, if I come into your program today and you admit me today, you have 10 days to process my admission paperwork within the database. Same if I was being discharged. This is a data element now that HUD is looking at. So it has time for record entry, 0 days, which means you're doing the admissions and discharges the same day it happens, 1 to 3 days, 4 to 6 days, 7 to 10 days, and 11 plus days. Our goal is to see everybody under the 7 to 10 days, so 7 to 10 days or less. And it breaks out into 2 columns, the number of project entry records that were completed in that time frame and the number of project exit records that were completed in that time frame. We then move on to the inactive records for street outreach and emergency shelter. I'm pulling this report for a permanent housing project, so this is all going to be zeros. However, if you are an outreach or emergency shelter project, inactive records means it's been a long time since there's been a contact with the client. The client's record is just kind of sitting there. Emergency shelter, the night-by-night shelters, if we see that a client has been in there for a really long time. So these are all of the data elements that are being looked at. And now if we scroll down, now we have our individual detailed list. So it said that I had clients that I had Social Security number issues with. And when we look here, we can see, oh, April Showers refused to answer the question regarding Social Security. I only got an approximate Social Security number for May Flowers. So that's how we can just check really quick, see who's missing the data that's been indicated in the tables above. All of these columns are sortable, so if you want to just know who has approximate Social Security numbers first, by clicking on the column heading, it's going to sort that alphabetically for you, either A to Z or Z to A. And that's for every single element across the entire report. So you can just take a look at that, and then you can click on the Excel links, which will let you export your reports into Excel. So if we click on the Excel link, this is a brand new feature that came out from our vendor. Anytime we're about to export something now from the awards HMIS database, we're going to get a message that's letting us know that we are potentially downloading protected health information. So the message reads, The file you are about to download may contain privileged and confidential data and/or protected health information. It is intended solely for your use and is subject to protection under the law as defined by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, which is HIPAA, and its successor legislation. Relevant guidelines and restrictions on use of information being downloaded and that you have taken will take all appropriate measures to protect and handle that information, including but not limited to ensuring that the device onto which the file is being downloaded has been encrypted as appropriate. Any questions about the status of this data or the requirements related to its handling should be directed to your HIPAA privacy/security officer, supervisor, or other appropriate staff at your agency. If you do not agree to these terms and conditions, click cancel. So, provided you agree with this PHI download alert, when you click on OK, now the report will download for you and it will open up in Excel, at which point you can now view the report like this. I am not going to save this report. I'm going to jump back to my home page, and now I'm going to jump into my messages. And I can see from internal audit, my HMIS data quality report for permanent housing is right here. When I open it up, it displays the report for me the same way it did on the previous page. I now have the HMIS data quality zip file, the HMIS data quality details zip file, which is the individual detail, as well as the report content in HTML. So I'm going to click on the data quality details zip file. I'm going to get the same alert. This is going to happen every time we're going to open a file on our computer. When that opens into Excel, now we can see these are our clients, and this is all of the information that we have for them. To make this a little easier to view, I'm going to take out some of these elements that I know I'm not missing. So I know I'm not missing any race, ethnicity, gender, or any of this information. I am missing somebody with a household ID, so I want to keep that. I am with head of household, as well as client location. And when I move over here, I can take out all of this, and it just makes it a little bit more manageable. And if I get rid of these fields right here, I can now turn this into a sortable spreadsheet. So if I'm looking for, if this was a very large report and I needed to see who was missing a household ID, I can just very quickly click on blanks, click OK, and now I can see that list tester is missing their household ID. If a client is missing household ID, it's because one of two things has happened. Number one, we gave them an approximate date of birth. So it can't, the database can't tell how old our client is since we didn't give them a full date of birth, so they won't have a household ID attached to them. The second is something happened with the household start date, and we didn't complete the process. So to fix that issue, that's done through our client's face sheet. So if we go to our home page, into our profile, selecting the correct program, clicking on face sheet, if I go into list tester's face sheet, because that's a client that was missing their household ID, and I click on household and child info, our client's admission date was 2/7/2017. When I click on household composition, our client's household start date is March 1st, 2017. Now, if you remember during training, I say many, many, many times that our client's admission date and their household start date has to be the same exact date. Otherwise, there are issues with household composition. So obviously, this client's admission date and their household start date are not the same. So I need to correct this. I have to correct the client's household start date. To do so, I now, in the household composition field, I simply click on either the client's first name or last name, and it opens it up into editing mode. I can edit their household composition. So relationship to primary client, they were never even given a relationship to primary client, which is strange. So I'm going to say that this is partner, and I'm going to change their start date to 2/27/17, which is the same as their admission date. And I'm going to click on continue. And now it's 2/7/17. I apologize. So I need to change that again to 2/7/17. Now 2/7/17 for household start date, 2/7/17 as well for admission date. This relation to primary client is not saving. That's something that our help desk at Foothold Technology is looking into. And once that's corrected, that field will save for you. So in short, that is the HMIS data quality report. If you have any questions, always give one of us a call. We're here to help. And with that, have a great day.